How are we already 6 months through the year? We are halfway through the year. What is time? Where does it go? I swear I stare at the wall too much because I don't know what I'm doing with all my time. But I do know one thing, that I've read a lot of books this year. And I've read some that I've loved and some that I haven't loved. And today we're gonna go over the best and the worst of the year so far. The way I do this on my channel, it's inspired by Becca. Becca did it once upon a time and I loved it. And I have done it ever since. I don't like to spoil my top 10 list for the end of the year. So instead of just giving you my favorite book so far and my least favorite book so far, I give you the best and the worst of each month. We're gonna start right at the top with January. January is always an interesting month for my favorites because I run a booktuber favorites month. I called it Booktube Bestie in the past, but this year it was called Booktuber Battle, where I put booktubers head to head against each other. They each had to pick me a book off their favorite list of the year, and I had to read them, and it was 1v1 and one was gonna win at the end. And I ended up with 2 horrors, one the best and one the worst. So for my best of January, I read The Patient. This was picked for me from Riley Marie, and I absolutely loved it. This is a story that actually was originally posted on Reddit for their horror challenge thing that they do. I've had really good success with all the Reddit ones that I've read, and I'm always looking for more. This follows our main character, who is a psychiatrist, ends up going to this hospital where there's a patient that no one really enters. They don't really know what's wrong with him, but people who try to treat him end up either crazy or dead. But of course, our main character decides that he's the one to beat this challenge. He takes up the mantle and decides he's going to heal this guy, and we just watch as we try to figure out what's going on with this patient. I thought this was creepy, gave me the chills, and I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it if you're looking for a short, quick horror read for sure. I lied to you about my worst book of the year. I just rechecked the stats, and it was not a horror. It was actually a fantasy romance. Divine Rivals, which is so loved by everyone here on BookTube, and I feel like the internet in general, but I found this book incredibly boring. I didn't think they had any chemistry. There was a little bit of cool world building, but it was very small. This really, I think, read more like a historical romance than anything that's like fantasy romance. I needed to lean a little bit more fantasy. I was bored by this, didn't enjoy it. I don't have a lot to say about it. I read it so long ago now. We're gonna move on to the next month. Next up we have February, and I think February was a thriving month for me. In this month we had 72 hours in the reading nook, and I read a lot of new favorites within that weekend. My favorite book though had to have been Slaying the Shadow Prince by Helen Schuer. This started my Legends of Thasmar love. I started with this one. I know some people don't suggest starting with it, but I do. I had a really good time starting with it. I think it's the best book in the series. This is like a standalone companion novel to the Legends of Thasmar. It's also technically in the series of Mortal Enemies to Monster Lovers, which is 5 standalones by different authors. We're following our main character, Drew, who is a noblewoman turned ranger who wants one thing: vengeance. To kill off the Shadow Race who killed all of her family except for her father. And that means carving out the heart of every dark creature she can find. Insert Talamere Starling, who is a war sword of the realm, which is essentially a high noble knight style warrior who comes and meets Drew, and they have to work together to accomplish their goal of taking down the Shadow Race. However, Talamere has a secret that Drew actually knows. He was touched by the wraiths and is now half Shadow Wraith. A little bit of a shadow daddy, if you will. This is a reluctant allies to lovers. It's a standalone. I really liked this. I love the prose in this. It's a wonderful book, and you should really check it out. I also read my least favorite in that same weekend, which is Never Die by Rob J. Hayes. And I'm very sad that this is on the worst book. I was so excited for this book after loving Pawn's Gambit, which I read for Spiffbo last year. It was one of my semi-finalists and almost became my finalist. Master of the Void just beat it out by the smallest amount. This is also a series of standalones, so I think it's cool that my best and my worst are kind of similar. In this one, we're following our main character, who is on a mission from a god of death. Time is up for the Emperor of 10 Kings, and it falls to a murdered 8-year-old boy to render the judgment of a god. He finds these heroes, he kills them, and then he brings them back to life, and they're tied to him and have to do what he says. It has some interesting elements to it. I think the world building in this is really cool. I really like Rob J. Hayes' writing. However, I was bored in this. It was very much like, find someone, pick them up, go find another person, pick them up, so on and so on. It was very repetitive, and I just didn't catch my interest. So I thought this was kind of boring, and I feel like it's a similar concept to Pawn's Gambit, but Pawn's Gambit does it better, which is the second standalone. that I read first. Maybe it's my fault for reading them out of order. Then we move on to March. My best book was a Rob J. Hayes book, so he went from bottom of the pile to top of the pile. I read Demon. I had access to it because I backed the Kickstarter for this. I've talked about these on my channel quite a bit. Rob J. Hayes is doing a trilogy of trilogies. He released 3 book ones that are all in the same world. They're just different places on the timeline. The idea is you read all 3 book ones before you move on to book 2s, and I think that's really exciting. I went in chronological order, although I believe Hayes recommends reading Herald first, which is like the big main series, and moving backwards, but I am a chronological girly at heart, and so I did that. I read Demon first. I love Demon. This is a dark horror fantasy in my opinion. There's cannibals. We're following this world where demons rule the world and the humans are really struggling to survive. They can't have fire because fire will call the demons to them, and we follow our main character who's in a village. Hello. That accident calls the demons to them, and their entire village is murdered off or taken as prisoner. She is taken as prisoner, and she's forced to go on to this long journey to essentially become a slave to the demons, to do all their grunt work, and she has to plot to escape. But I thought this was dark. Lots of this story made me go, oh my god, savage. And I really, really, really loved this one. I've still been thinking about this story to this day. I think I probably should have given it 5 stars. I only gave it 4 stars, but I really, really enjoyed this one. The beginning was a little slow. I'm not a big journey person. That's why I didn't get the 5 star. But the ending, oh my god, it's also really short, below 200 pages. The worst book of this month was Slaying the Frost King. This is a standalone in that series I was talking about with Slaying the Shadow Prince. I just kind of got the ick from our main love interest. He kind of called her ugly a few times, and I just couldn't get past that. I don't know. I don't want to read a romance book where the love interest thinks the one person is not the prettiest in the room. Like, I want my boyfriend to think I'm the prettiest in the room, even if I'm not. Lie to me. Lie to yourself. Tell the reader that I'm gorgeous, stunning. There's no one hotter than me. And I needed this love interest to do that, and he didn't. And on top of that, I feel like the story's plot just didn't really go anywhere. It really only followed the romance that I had the ick for. The plot itself, the book ends before the plot is resolved, and I didn't love that. We're essentially following a kingdom where the Frost King is trying to save them from something that's coming. To save them, he takes a sacrifice, and this year they did not sacrifice anyone, so he comes to take someone to pick the perfect person to sacrifice, and he picks our main character, but then realizes there's something different about her, and he can't sacrifice her, and a budding romance happens. But yeah, I gave this book 1 star. I didn't like it. Once I have the ick, it's really hard to not give me the ick. I don't know. Just call me hot and beautiful. Please don't say that my best friend is more pretty than me. That's just rude. April, I didn't read a lot of books, but my favorite book of the month was Deathless by Rob J. Hayes. This is, again, set in that trilogy of trilogies. This is the 2nd book, another shorter story. This follows a kingdom where now the demons are gone and the angels rule, and we follow our king who thinks the angels are up to something, that they're bringing humanity back, even though they helped them escape the demons at one point. The angels are now kind of being the evil overseer rulers, and the humans have not enough freedom, and we have to watch this king try to escape the angels. Really well done, in my opinion. I really love that Rob J. Hayes makes me switch sides a million times during this series with each book. And yeah, I really liked this one. There's a lot of discussions on power corrupting in the series and politics and stuff. I enjoyed this one, but not as much as Demon. My worst book of April was When the Moon Hatched. I did not like this, which is so sad because so many people loved it. Maybe I just don't like popular things. This and Divine Rivals. I didn't like the writing style in this. It really hurts my brain. I don't like that she doesn't explain her world building well enough, but explains weird stuff so much. Like, it's so descriptive heavy, but then I have to look in the glossary to understand what this type of magic is. Like, explain that to me. Don't explain to me how the wind whizzed past her foot as she walked. Explain to me what the magic is. That's my personal preference. I know a lot of people who loved this. I didn't really love the romance. I thought it was boring. This also has a trope that I hate, the amnesia trope. It does not work for me. It stops me from caring about characters, because if they don't understand their actions, how can I understand their actions? So this was a big no for me. I was very sad. It was a chunker. I was going to finish it off because I thought it was a duology, but turns out it is now a trilogy, so I will not be continuing on in this series. This was very sad for me. A lot of people thought I was going to give this book 5 stars, and it turns out I gave it 2 stars. Oops. In May, my favorite book was The Kindred's Curse Saga. I read both Heat and Glow of the Everflame this month, and I gave them both 5 stars back to back, so I can't really separate them in my head. But we can go with the third book as my favorite book of the month because I do think it gets better. I don't know. This series starts with Spark of the Everflame, which I didn't love. I gave a low 3 stars. But then I gave these ones 5 stars. I think this is the next big romantasy series. It's so incredible. Luther is my newest current obsession. He is the best book boyfriend of the year. Like, he's getting that award for sure. This follows our main character, who has been told all of her lives, do not go near the Descended. In this world, the gods came down and fell in love with humans, which is so sweet. They didn't want to live forever while their human companions died, so they bound themselves to their loves and their lives. So when the human companion died, they died too, leaving the Descended, their children, in charge. Over centuries, the Descended have kind of become a little bit cruel, a little bit power tripping, think that they're above the humans and all that stuff. And as I said, our main character is told to avoid them because they're not very nice, but her mother is the Descended healer, and when her mother goes missing, she takes over that mantle. She decides to go do the healing job, and she intertwines herself into some Descended business, just like her mother always told her not to. And we all know where that's gonna lead to, especially when Luther enters the ring. My least favorite book this month was The Missing. This is a thriller. I just didn't vibe with this one. It was very romance heavy, and I wanted the characters to have more agency to the plot. I feel like we just kind of watched the plot happen and no one actually reacted to anything or did anything. I was bored. Honestly, I feel like it was more romance than a thriller, and it didn't need the romance. Essentially, we're following a main character who goes on a ship by herself that she's invited onto, and then the ship ends up deserting her on an abandoned island with a bunch of other strangers, and they have to try to get off of it while there's people watching them, telling them to kill each other. And we're at June, the final month of this video. My favorite book of June was One Dark Window. I don't know how to explain this book to you. I'm so bad at explaining it. I think everyone is. The back of the book does not explain this very well. Essentially, we're following a world where magic is kind of seen as bad, except for certain types of magic. So essentially, there's an illness that comes, and if you get it and survive, you end up with magic, but magic takes a price on you, and most people with the magic go insane. So the king rules anyone to have this illness is dead, murdered, gone. However, there's another type of magic that is okay to use, and there are these cards, and each card is a different type of magic, and it also has a price to pay, but it's not the same price to pay, and you can kind of limit yourself on it. We follow our main character, who as a child had this illness and is hiding her magic from the king and the world, but she gets herself into the hands of the prince and the royal knight, I forget what he's called. They find out her secret, that she has magic, and then her magic will help them find all the cards. And if we find all the cards before the king does, we can overrule the king and kick him off his throne. So she has no choice and she has to help them. And there's a little romance that happens as well. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was one of the coolest magic systems I've read in a long time. I haven't read a lot like it. The cards were really interesting. I loved every time we learned about a new card. And I really liked the male main character in this. The female main character, a little bit boring. She's really easy to self-insert yourself to, in my opinion. I liked the male, and I had a lot of fun with this, and the second book follows my actual favorite character, which I didn't know until my live show for this with my patrons, and now I'm excited for the second book. And my least favorite book of June was To Bleed a Crystal Bloom, also by Sarah A. Parker. I've decided this author is not for me. I just don't vibe with her writing style, and that's okay. I can accept that. Just like Slaying the Frost King, I got the ick in this, and I couldn't get past it. Our love is between a father figure, essentially, and his daughter, not biological, but essentially he saves her when she's 2, and the rest of her family dies, and then he raises her, and as she gets older, they have, stuff. There is literally sexual scenes with them, and I just couldn't get past the fact that he's raised her. I liken it to, a Renesmee style trope for all our Twilight fans. I didn't like this. It didn't work for me. It could work for you if this tropiness thingy, this thing doesn't bother you. I just got the ick and I couldn't get past it, but there is a cool plot in this, on top of the fact that I didn't like the writing style. I will definitely not be trying this author again, no matter what. If I say I'm going to, someone yell at me. There we go. Those are my best and the worst so far of the year. Can you guess which one is my actual best of the year so far? There's one. I think there's 2 really good contenders on this list for my favorite of the year. I would love to know what your favorite book of the year has been so far down below. I will leave my favorite video that I've created this year on the screen for you to check out. That's hard, I have to pick one. I'm gonna have to make myself pick one. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me an emoji just to say you're here, leave me a frog emoji and have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.